Welcome to Nonprofit Stories, inspiring tales from Silicon Valley. We will explore the transformative work of nonprofit organizations and leaders who are changing our community by tackling some of the most pressing issues facing Silicon Valley. So without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Matt Roben, a farm animal sanctuary director of Rancho Roben Rescues. Their mission is to provide a loving and safe forever home to farm animals in need while cultivating the reciprocal relationship between farm animals and people. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. In Silicon Valley, shelters grapple with high intakes of rescued animals, exceeding 10,000 annually, and lagging adoption rates, leading to overcrowding. Coupled with an average medical care cost of $500 per animal and a 20% vacancy rate among veterinary professionals, these factors pose significant challenges to providing timely, quality care. Before we dive into the conversation, let's learn a little about the organization's great work so far.
On a ranch in the East Foothills,
Hi, Mr. Clive.
Matt Roben goes through his daily routine.
Oh, hi, Marcelo. There you go. It's snack time for you and the ladies. That's my chickies.
And that's Matt Roben of Rancho Roben Rescues.
We have 5 pigs and 6 goats. No, I forget. One or the other. The enclosure over there includes our 2 farm dogs. We have a full-size horse, 2 ponies, 3 alpaca, 60, 70 hens, and 30 ducks.
You have a partridge and a pear tree?
Nothing would make me happier than to truly say I've got that partridge in a pear tree.
It's all quite a change for Matt,
Yeah.
who spent 25 years
Oh, that yummy.
in the circus. Then 4 years as a cop in Chicago
This field is all part of ours, too.
to become a kilt-wearing animal rescue man on the 12-acre farm only 10 miles east of downtown San Jose.
Fun fact, I wore pants like a normal human being until about 3 or 4 years ago.
In the meantime, Matt and Emily are doing anything they can for their disabled animals.
So Daisy is our blind and one-eyed pony.
As long as it doesn't frighten the horses. or even if it does.
And now your host of Nonprofit Stories, Dee Kiso.
Welcome to the program today. You're going to love it if you are an animal lover, because today I have Matt Roben of Rancho Roben Rescues. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Dee.
So tell me, what got you inspired to start this Rancho Roben Rescues?
It really was just a one of those things where kind of life seemed to want this to happen for me. We had a friend in Chicago who we were living there at the time, who tragically committed suicide. And while a friend of ours was taking care of a lot of his things, I was just checking in with him, how's it been going? And he said, good overall, his family's taken most of his stuff, but for, the thing I am having a hard time with is a dozen chickens he happened to have in his backyard. So in case you're interested in some chickens, and I kind of laughed and said, well, I would be, I guess, yeah, but I don't know if I'm ready for 12. So we ended up taking 3 of them. We brought them home, and they were in our small backyard in Chicago, and it all kind of started there. And if you've ever gotten into the world of poultry, they jokingly refer to something called chicken math. And that is, you buy yourself a nice small little coop that's perfect for the 3 hens you have, and then one of those hens dies. So you go, okay, I should probably buy a few more, because if one of 3 died, that means the second of 3 could die, and then I'll only have 1. So you go out and buy 3 more. Well, now you have 5 chickens, but you realize you need a bigger chicken coop. So then you build or buy a bigger chicken coop, and now that's not full, so you buy more, and the next thing you know, you run a farm animal sanctuary with 192 animals.
So you are warned. If you want a few chickens, be careful, because we could possibly turn into a complete animal rescue.
Exactly.
Well, what a great idea. So then what inspired you to transition from circus to the animal sanctuary work?
Well, there's an interesting career hop in there as well.
Tell us about that.
I would be happy to. So I'd moved from the Bay Area, grew up in San Jose or Saratoga, and left Bellarmine in 1995 to attend the National Circus School in Montreal, Canada. And I spent 2 years in the circus school there learning how to be an acrobatic bicyclist. I spent almost 25 years traveling the world doing acrobatic bike, and everyone thinks it's on a tight wire, but it's basically on the ground. You're riding in a circle. Anything you do riding forwards, you can do riding backwards, facing forwards, facing backwards. I would do halftime shows, Bulls halftime shows, stuff like that. Worked on a cruise ship on a bicycle, no less, which was a very interesting part of my world. But I was an entertainer, and I absolutely loved every single second of it. But I just started to realize, I wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to be doing with my life. And I kind of had one of these, is this what I want to do forever? And a couple of my friends at the time happened to be police officers and jokingly said, you should apply for the Chicago Police Department. You'd be an amazing cop. And I totally thought they were kidding, and also never in a million years thought I would do that. And lo and behold, I sat down and took the police entrance exam, got in. 3 weeks before I turned 40, I became a police officer in Chicago. Spent 6 months in the academy, and then I was out on the streets, and I amazingly got to join a bicycle team. I was right around Wrigley Field, so unrelated to me being a circus artist, I was on the entertainment detail, which means much like we're right next to Levi Stadium, there are cops who will patrol the stadium during game days. That would be considered the entertainment detail. We're not like tap dancing. Not that I was opposed to that. But so I did the police job for about 4 years. But in that time, I had these animals. And my wife and I kind of said, someday it would be an amazing thing to have a farm. Now, we thought this was a decade or two down the road. And we would look occasionally and find things, this would be wonderful, but, just out of the price range, not possible. And then the pandemic hit. And we had a lot more free time to look at things. And I looked more and more seriously. And one day we found basically the perfect spot, which is where we ended up buying and moving back to California for. And my brother-in-law calls one day and says, hey, there's 12 acres with full solar, 3 wells, a 5-bedroom house, 6-car garage, 3-car carport, 6-stall barn. It's fully fenced in. It's got a view of downtown. It's 20 minutes from downtown. And it's a world away from San Jose, but it is 18 minutes from downtown. And we took a look at it and realized with where our family was, this is the perfect place. With all the land, this would allow us to expand. At the time, we had 6 chickens, 1 duck, and 2 goats while they were in our small backyard in Chicago. And those became what became the first residents of the appropriately renamed Rancho Roben Rescues. So,
wow. So then how do you think your previous careers helped you manage this new career?
Oh, I think both of them, you have to have the ability to kind of take whatever comes at you, right? Having been a performer, you realize, you can't just walk off stage if something's going wrong. You have to deal with it. Being a cop, you have to literally run into a situation with 0 information and no ability to know in advance other than this is the 3 sentences we told you, if you're lucky, what's going on. And you have to try and figure out things on the fly. So people often ask me, how do your careers translate? Well, part of it is I love helping people. And as an entertainer, I felt like I was taking people out of their world and into a kind of a magical, joyful moment I could bring them to on stage, whether it was dramatic or comical. And then as a police officer, I quite literally had to take people from a terrible situation to a ideally better situation. And I would often say, look, even when I'm arresting somebody, I'm helping them because you are clearly making a not great decision when you are ending up getting arrested for something. And I would say, look, I'm not judging you. There's a person, as we all know, that is a judge. They will do that job. I am just the person who is transporting you from where you did this thing to where you have to go next in this process. We can be as polite and friendly with each other as you would like. And I still have to do my job no matter what. So let's keep it friendly. And 99% of the time that worked. So
cool. So what's the most surprising aspect of running the animal rescue?
There's always, not surprising with 190 animals, there's always something going on. So you think, oh, I've got a turkey who's not doing well. And then you find a cat that got into a fight that has a massive bite on its face. So now you have to go deal with that. Or you're having a perfectly wonderful, it's been weeks since we've had to spend any money at the vet. And, everyone always thinks our feed bill is going to be what kills us every year. And it's like, no, it's one bad day at the vet. The horse has a impacted tooth, and it turns out that's a $2,500 veterinary visit on multiple calls because they need x-rays, because they need sedation, because they need a follow-up, because they need these medicines. So it's huge, and you never know what you're getting. But I think the surprise for me is that I'm actually able to tolerate the kind of constancy of it because as you can tell from the various jobs I've had, I don't stay idle very long. So it's always something new to do.
So how do you get all of these animals to the vet when they need to get there?
Thankfully, if it's a big animal, the horses, alpaca, I'm trying to think who else. Mainly the horses and the alpaca. We have 3 alpaca, a full-size horse, and 2 ponies. If any of them get ill, the vet will drive out. It's, I think, maybe an extra $75 or $100 for that. But relative to what it takes to load up a distressed animal into a trailer and then drive it for an hour each way to the vet, it's a no-brainer, right? It's also how much is my time worth. So if we have to spend half a day driving it to and from, as opposed to having the vet who's like, hey, I'll actually be in your area tomorrow, we can go with that. So most of the livestock vets are in rural areas. So you're looking at Gilroy, or UC Davis is another one we've had to go up to. But a lot of them, I can literally throw them in the back of the truck, throw them, put them, place them,
Gently.
lovingly, not throw. But, we put them in the back of the truck and we just drive down there. So I will have, at any given time, I've had 3 sheep in the back of we have a Honda Element, which I like to say is the perfect vehicle for that because it has a plastic floor. So you can just rinse it out when you need to. Chickens, ducks, geese, dogs, turkeys, cats, those are all pretty easy to put in a small cage. So it's, it depends on where we have to go, but yeah.
So have you learned to do a little bit of this veterinary work yourself? And tell me about that.
Yeah, the best part about this is the other half of my wonderful farm is my amazing wife, Emily, who I could appropriately refer to as Dr. Emily Roben. She happens to be a pediatric emergency doctor. So she is very well versed in diagnosing what is going on, with a situation, and then also how to handle either injections or cleanup. And she loves the gross things. So, anything that involves removing pus, she's a big fan of. She does not mind for 1 second doing the dirty jobs. So she will kind of show me how to do it. But, it's one of those things I always wondered how I would handle it. And similar to when I was a police officer, you kind of don't know until you get there. But then you realize, hey, look, this is part of the job and you just have to do it. And you can freak out about it later and say, oh, man, that was disgusting. But right now, for us, it's really the animal needs my help. Or in the case of being an officer, that person needed my help. So, I've had to do, you find an animal that got mauled by, let's say, a coyote or, hawks occasionally. And all you can do is the best that you can to take it, put it in a comfortable scenario. You want to limit its stimulation. You want to, of course, clean up the wound, any sort of, pain meds you can give them. And it's, so you got to look, hey, do I have to call my vet for this? Do I have this on hand? If I have it on hand, what is the dose for the animal based on its weight? Is it once a day, twice a day? So just like a doctor would do. So between my wife, our vets, and thankfully the world of the internet, you can kind of get a lot of stuff done. And then some of it is just, really common sense. Something got a cut. Well, what would you do if it was your cut, right? Same sort of a thing. Clean it up, put a bandage on it, and move on with your day.
So 200 animals is a lot. How do you ensure their safety every day?
So we have 2 full-time employees named Alton and Emery, and they are 110 and 115-pound livestock guardian dogs. We got them, they were about 2 months old and weighed around 20 pounds, little adorable balls of white fluff. And they were raised on a goat farm near the foothills of Yosemite. And they essentially are a breed that has for thousands of years been taking care of sheep and goats in the mountains. And so they are naturally inclined to spend their time protecting the animals that they're kind of surrounding or that surround them, because a flock is much larger than the 1 or 2 of them. So you will find them most of the day kind of napping, sleeping, just taking a break, because that's not when predators are out. It's typically at night that you have issues. So I like to say my dogs sleep all day and they bark all night, but that's why they're good at their job. Instead of having to fight a coyote, if they're just kind of barking all night, and it's not consistent, but enough that if they sense something's out there, they'll start barking. And if you're a 30-pound coyote and you can hear the sound of a 110-pound dog barking, you probably decide to move to the next property and say, hey, you know what? This isn't the place I'm going to try and look for dinner. So thankfully, we haven't lost anything to date, knock on wood, wherever that wood may be. But they do a really good job. And then making sure that every animal gets closed up in a secure cage. So knowing, people think, oh, chicken wire. Well, chicken wire is good for keeping chickens in, but it's terrible for keeping predators out, because a raccoon can reach its paw through, grab onto a chicken, pull it out, and they'll, not to get gross for a second, they will literally tear their heads off. in order to kill them, and they're capable of doing that through the chicken wire. They also have the abilities of, I believe they say, about a 4-year-old, so they're able to open complex locks. So you can't just have a simple latch to close it. So we use 1/2-inch hardware cloth, which is a metal square about that big, that they can't pull through as easily. I mean, you want to think what could get in here, what could do the damage, and how do we kind of mitigate all those circumstances.
So what unique challenges do you face having this rescue in the Silicon Valley area?
I don't know that it's a challenge. I think if anything, it's kind of the joy of it is sharing with people that this is even a thing. I mean, I grew up in Saratoga and spent my entire childhood staring across the valley at the East Hills, and I don't think I ever realized that there were farm animals up there. I knew there was maybe a horse farm up in the Saratoga Mountains, but that was it. It just kind of was one of those, oh no, this is what like one random person does, not kind of a regular thing. And the first time we drove up the hill, we realized there's a goat ranch and a sheep ranch, and there's a neighbor with, chickens, and we became much more like the broad variety of animals. But I look on the hill and I see my neighbor who raises cattle, so you've got everything up there. It's really educating people on what used to be, before this was Silicon Valley, it was the Valley of Heart's Delight. And it was where 90% of the fruit that came, to the soldiers in wars were brought from the West Coast, and particularly this region. We don't realize that this multi-million-dollar real estate we're on is sitting on about 28 feet of the world's most fertile topsoil. So if you want to plant a garden, you are on prime ground for it. So, yeah.
A typical problem homeowners have when wanting to buy a new home is whether to sell first or buy first. Either way is risky. When ready to look for a new home, TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, offers an upfront guaranteed cash offer on your current home. Are you moving in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no obligation professional equity appraisal report, exclusively for Nonprofit Stories podcast viewers. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it.
So why the focus on farm animals at Rancho Roben?
Well, I think honestly, my wife and I never thought we were cat or dog people. And the chickens, as I mentioned, just kind of came out of a tragic accident, but something that seemed to work nicely with hey, we have a few garden beds, and, urban chicken keeping is a novelty. And so in Chicago, and we never had any intention of leaving Chicago. We thought we'd stay there for the rest of our lives. She moved there a few years after I did for med school. And what I thought was going to be 6 months for some improv classes turned into 17 years. And once she was there and working regularly as a doctor, it didn't make sense for us to move just to move. So there had to be a really good reason to leave. But, at the time we had, like I said, just a few animals in our backyard, and every kid who was walking home from school would stop by our gate and, want to throw bread to the ducks, or, get the chickens to eat a carrot or whatever they had, or the goats would jump up onto the fence, and they thought it was hilarious that they were headbutting the fence. But we just really, we loved that aspect of it. And it just became a thing where it grew larger and larger, realizing how many people didn't have the capacity to take care of the animals they did. So the first time a true, other than the 3 we got initially, rescue happened, our vet called and said, hey, I know you guys have a couple of chickens. Would you be interested in a duck? And we said, well, I don't know. I don't know much about ducks. And she's like, look, other than water, they're not that much different than chickens. Here's what you can learn about them. But a girl basically had a duck for 6 months. She thought this was going to be like the TV show Friends and have it wander around her apartment. And what people don't realize is ducks don't just poop in a little litter box in the corner once a day. They poop 10 or 20 times a day wherever they're walking. So not the thing you want in your apartment. We ended up taking this in because we didn't want it to just, have nowhere to go. So that was the first one. Then our vet called us a few weeks later. Hey, there's a chicken that literally wandered into our office, and there was actually a live poultry and rabbit butcher shop across the street. They said, we think she might have escaped from there, but if you'd be willing to take her in, we'd love to give her a home. So all of a sudden, we became the go-to for our vet. And then we would see on Facebook groups, hey, I've got a chicken. It's the only one left. Would anybody be interested? So, that's how we went from, 0 to 3, 3 becomes 5, 5 becomes 6, 7, 8, down to 4, up to, the constant evolving numbers.
So I'm guessing you have plenty of eggs at your place.
I think we currently have about 250 eggs, and by next week, that'll probably be about 250 more. And we're not, we don't sell them, we just give them away. And in a sense, it makes more sense because people are far happier to make a generous donation than, if it's a business transaction, it's like, well, this egg has some poop on it. And I'm like, well, yes, it is an egg, and we do not have a sterile, factory farm setting. We let our chickens wander around where they will be in their natural environment, or as much as can be a natural environment for them. So we give away a whole lot of eggs, yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to come up and make a donation for some tasty, fresh eggs.
You are welcome to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's the story behind the first animal you rescued after returning to San Jose?
Yeah, so it was actually a horse that was, or two horses, I'll say. We had thought about, before we ever thought about dogs, we said, what would be really awesome is to get a donkey. And people don't realize this, but donkeys are great guardian animals. They can actually be shockingly violent if they need to, but they're otherwise pretty relaxed and friendly. And so we started looking at different sanctuaries that had donkeys around. And we said, hey, I wonder if it's possible to find a donkey. Well, nobody had a donkey available. And so we were like, well, that's a bummer. But they did have two adorable miniature horses. And there's kind of no exact description between whether it's a mini horse or a pony. A pony is a size reference, and that is 11 hands or smaller. A hand is 4 inches, so that width of a hand, but 4 inches. So 44 inches at the withers, which is where the neck kind of curves down into the shoulders. So 44 inches and less, and it's a pony. Any taller than that, 11 hands, now it's a full-size horse. So every horse at one point was a pony. Anyways, miniature horse pony. We got these two ponies. It was a mom named Daisy May and her daughter Amanda Rose. Daisy May had been rescued from what's known as a kill shelter or a kill pen. And they have these all throughout the South and kind of the plain states where there are literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of horses roaming the wilds, but also abandoned and neglected and abused animals. So if you've ever heard of, horses get turned into glue or dog food, this is what they're referring to. At these auctions, they will sell them off. And if it's a healthy animal, somebody might decide, hey, this is worth $1,000 to buy, and I can break this stallion and turn it into a wonderful working horse. Or it's a kind of sickly animal, but something that, I can probably, if I have this thing slaughtered, I've got 800 pounds of horse meat to feed my dogs. And that's what they mean when they say it's getting turned into dog food. So there's a lot of rescue organizations that go to these and just spend every dime they can to save as many of these animals as they can. They bring them back to their shelters, or they have a network of shelters, and they'll just start dropping them off from, let's say it's Texas. They'll drop them off in every state that they can on their way back to wherever their home is. So they had these horses for 3 years, actually, because mom, unfortunately, was blind in her left eye. Nobody wanted this blind pony. And we said, well, what's so hard about a blind pony? They're like, oh, nothing. They just seemingly wanted a perfect pony, and she wasn't. And that's what kind of really made us start to realize, hey, look, we can take every animal, but I think the more we can focus on those animals that really are the unwanted ones, that is the thing that's more needed. Because for every healthy hen that needs a home, there's probably 30 homes that would happily say, yeah, I'll take your egg-laying hen. It's the one who maybe only has one leg or who's missing an eye. We have a completely blind goose. We have an alpaca who's missing an eye, the pony who's blind in one eye, an almost immobile turkey. As long as they seem like they're not in physical distress, we look at a lot of those signs. Are they eating healthy? Are they drinking? How does their poop look? All the things that make you go, yeah, this is still a otherwise healthy animal. We're happy to keep them around, and we have to make that difficult decision for euthanasia sometimes. But every animal then when it moves in with us stays there forever. So we're not in a sense of a lot of rescues where they're looking for a new home. We are their forever home. So we are the sanctuary that they call their forever homes.
Your forever home and your feather ever home, right?
Yeah.
So how has the Silicon Valley community helped you with your mission?
Well, thankfully, and no big surprise, people love animals. So when I tell people we run a farm animal sanctuary, their eyes absolutely light up, and they just, tell me more, which is probably why I'm here today.
That's right.
It really is just such a fun thing to share with people. And we have kids up, we've done a couple of school tours, and, to show a child for the first time, especially when they're, third grade, they're reading Charlotte's Web, you get to truly put a face to just the name in the book. For a while, we had a baby pig who's now still a small pig, but when she was little and those kids were reading, they thought they were meeting Wilbur. So it is fun. And we also do Airbnb on a school bus that, when I realized we had to move out from Chicago with 6 chickens, 1 duck, and 2 goats. I amazingly convinced my wife that I should buy a school bus to convert into a mobile barn. So the drive out, which I did initially before my wife joined me, was with the 6 chickens, 1 duck, and 2 goats inside of kind of a small, like 4 by 8 foot dog kennel. Did a drive in about 44 hours with 3 of my buddies and a bunch of stuff packed into it. And we did that drive, and that's kind of what got the animals out. Well, I took that bus, converted it into kind of a tiny home, or like the van life conversion things you see all over social media. Did that with the bus. Not trying to live in the bus, but what we do have is it gets rented out as an Airbnb. So we have families, I mean, the couples, you name it. We had a couple do their honeymoon on our farm, and you wake up in the morning and there's a horse staring at you, not right through the window, but 15 feet away. You get to wave at the horse in the morning, or maybe the alpaca or the sheep. And you wake up to the sound of a couple of roosters crowing at you, and just, we love sharing it with people. Wow. So having that opportunity. And we've had people who literally live a mile down the road from us who stay the night on our bus, because it's just, it's a world away from what Silicon Valley is. You think, oh, high tech everything. And then, nope, here's a guy who's living, the rural life, and I got to worry about my well pump and my septic system and my, it's awesome. I love it.
How do you see this sanctuary 5 years from now?
Hopefully that much bigger. For us, it's really about, we want to make sure we can give these animals the space that they need to live their kind of natural lifestyle. So you can't always, for example, allow, chickens, and we're jungle fowl from the jungles of Indonesia, essentially. So you're not going to, we're not going to say, run free into the forest and live good, buddy, right? We know that a lot of wild animals end up dying from disease or famine, things like that. So we do the best that we can to kind of keep them within confines of safety and shelter. But yeah, so we really allow them to free range as much as possible. We try and focus on rotational grazing, which is a part of kind of regenerative agriculture, where you're getting the land back to what it would have been, hundreds of years ago, before we thought row cropping and monoculture, monocropping was the way to go. After 50 years of only growing corn, your soil is completely stripped of nutrients. So what used to happen even up to 100 years ago, probably even 70 years ago, was you had your cows here and you had your pigs, and you might have the cows grazing, and then they moved to a different field, and then the pigs would graze and they would root up from stuff. And then you'd let your chickens go in and they would break apart all the poop and everything, and it would get mixed into your soil. You never had to add, phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium, the different fertilizers. And so by us allowing this kind of rotational grazing to occur, it's like a twofold thing for us. One is it allows us to continue having more animals, figuring out, how can we move them around, but also it kind of rehabilitates our land. So yeah, I mean, a more healthy, robust ecosystem. Planting trees, we're always planting more trees. We have about 30 fruit trees we planted in the last 2 years. So I would love to see it kind of become what the Valley of Heart's Delight used to be. Within reason, I'm not going to have 12 acres of fruit trees, because every tree, until it's mature enough, would have to be surrounded by fencing, because goats would love nothing more than to kill every one of those trees by eating their delicious leaves. So, but yeah, I think more animals and a healthier planet.
How do you manage the financial aspects of running such a large rescue?
So thankfully, because we own the land that it's on, we essentially have free rent, right? Like, we give the rescue the rent it would otherwise have to pay. So that takes a huge expense out of it. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we do get donations. And because I also am fortunate enough to kind of just be able to love what I do enough to figure out a way to make other things work financially, I've been able to kind of take care of the animals as best I can. We also have 2 farm hands who live with us and work for us. So they, hey, you can spend your time in a beautiful home in San Jose, and you can spend 10 hours, 12 hours a week working, with some animals. So 2 wonderful young ladies who are sadly moving back home to Maryland, but we have a new one moving in soon who is here to help us. And so, people who have this same love of animals are helping us. We have about 7 or 8 volunteers who also help us. But yeah, the human element is all, kind of volunteer work. And then the donations are really what makes the big difference. So awesome. We try and keep our costs minimal, but, we spend what we need to, and we don't even, question when we have to go to the vet. It's a necessity. So
what's been your most rewarding moment at Rancho Roben Rescues?
I think it's kind of just on a daily basis when you walk into a field and of course, I like to tell people these animals don't actually love me. They know that I'm the one providing them with their food. But it sure does feel like it when you have 2 dogs and 5 goats and 6 pigs, and they all run up to you like you're their favorite human being, because I essentially am their favorite human being by being the one who feeds them. And they all want to have, pets. They want you to pet them, and they all want to lay in your lap. And I only have 2 arms and 2 legs, so I can only pet so many animals. But it's that kind of, I would imagine it'd be like, not that any sane person would do this, but if you had, 25 children who all wanted to love and cuddle you at the same time, this is very much what I get to do every day with all these animals. And some of them, trust me, have no desire to be anywhere near me. They're like, you can leave that food right there and walk away now, pal. So I respect their needs, but it is fun when you have an animal that's just like, play with me. Kittens that want to be held and, cradled like a baby. It is very satisfying. So
why do you think animal rescues are so vital now, especially in Silicon Valley?
I think people underestimate how much animals become a part of our family, and the stress of having a sick or dying animal and the grief you go through is equal to or greater than what it is sometimes to lose a human in your life, because you spend more time with your pet sometimes. And so for people who are having to give us an animal, in the case of hey, we no longer have the ability or capacity to take care of this, it's a really tough thing for them. Or if it's a situation where, my mom had 5 chickens, she passed away, we're having to sell the house, we live elsewhere, we can't take them. We just want to know that they're going to have a good, safe home. It is the emotional and that really true, like removing that distress from people's lives. I mean, just the tears that people have in their eyes when they're having to give up an animal, or just realize they can't take care of it anymore. It really is a privilege to be able to kind of help them out with that. And then to say, hey, look, if you ever want to come back and visit them, they're always going to be here. They're not moving to another home. They're here forever. So
what advice would you have to anyone maybe listening to this today that thinks they might want to go out and start their own animal rescue?
Yeah. And, I talk about this a lot with people. I say, hey, first of all, come and volunteer. We have a perfect place for you to come and do this and say, hey, is this something I think is fun for 5 minutes? Or is this something that I'm going to be willing to wake up every day to work at sunrise? Because that's when you start working with the animals. And every day at sunset, because that's when they go to bed. And in winter, that's an 8 or 9 hour day. But in summer, that's a wake up at 4:45 to 5 a.m. so you can be out at first light. And that means it's getting dark around 9 p.m. So you have a very long day. So you put in an 8-hour workday and you realize there's still about 7 more hours of daylight, and you feel like, well, I should probably be doing more. So go spend time on a farm animal sanctuary if you can, whether it's visiting one or regularly volunteering. Spend time at a veterinary clinic, especially large livestock vets. So, it's going to be further away, but spend time interacting with cows and sheep and chickens and pigs and all the animals that you would have to do, and see, is this something I actually enjoy, or that just seems like a fun thing? And then ask yourself, is this something I'm willing to do for the life of an animal, much like with a dog or a cat? We think, oh, wow, that's a major commitment. Well, that, might be 15 or 18 years. Well, we just got 2 Mojave Desert tortoises that were 15 years old when we received them. They can live 50 to 80 years. I'm about to turn 47. So if that thing lives 65 more years, my nephew is going to be inheriting 2 Mojave Desert tortoises, in addition to horses that can live 30 plus years. Even I'm trying to think of what animals. Yeah, I mean, there's animals that live way longer than you anticipate, tortoises especially, but birds, people get parrots that can live 80 to 100 years. I mean, that's multi-generational. So doing your homework on that, and that's true whether it's running a farm animal sanctuary or any animal whatsoever. Not giving in to the child who says, I really want this, and then it turns out the child's too busy to take care of it, and you're too busy to take care of it, and then it becomes somebody else's problem. And then also truly spaying and neutering every animal that is in your life. Dogs and cats, 100%, because they can truly have, a cat can have 6 babies, every season. And if they do that every year and half of those babies are male and half of those female, it's, do the math on that. It's a lot. So taking responsible care of your animal and realizing it's not an item you are taking care of, but a life that you are truly sharing your time with.
Well, Matt, we appreciate you. We thank you so much for what you're doing and for coming out and sharing with us so we can share with our community the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Didi.
Here's a sneak peek of the next episode of Nonprofit Stories, featuring Rashmi Rustagi, producer of Designed by Priyati.
My South Asian friends, Indian friends, who were in abusive marriages.
Designed by Priyati depicts a woman's fight against domestic abuse and mental health issues, inspiring change and dialogue on vital social matters through true event-based, authentic storytelling.
When a close relative, I found out about a close relative, a similar thing, putting up with abuse, it really nagged at me, and I really wanted to tell the story.
Check out our next full episode on Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and Apple Podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the impactful work of nonprofits in Silicon Valley. Please subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. Until next time, remember to support local nonprofits.